Direct from our newsroom in New York, in color, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. And John Sheehan in Erfurt, East Germany. David Culhane in New York. Morley Safer in London. Ike Pappas in Dwight, Illinois. Terry Drinkwater in Los Angeles. And tonight, another special report on the environmental crisis. Can the world be saved?
Good evening. Communist East Germany today was the site of an historic meeting between rival leaders of the two Germanys. And the most dramatic aspect was the warmth of the welcome given Chancellor Willy Brandt. John Sheehan reports.
These are the people of Erfurt, East Germany. They've come here to see something they've never seen before, a visiting West German head of government.
They want to see Willy Brandt, and they're not going to be cheated. The East German authorities' worst dreams have just come true. Some very brave East Germans are chanting the Chancellor's name. What we're experiencing here is one of the reasons the East Germans were reluctant to hold this summit conference between Brandt and East German Prime Minister Willi Stoph at all. The crowd is chanting for Brandt to come to the window. There's a good deal of risk involved in what these people are doing. The plainclothes agents helping to hold the crowd back will see to it that there are personal consequences for anybody who displays this kind of warmth toward Brandt. Stoph opened the historic meeting with a demand that the East German Democratic Republic be given full diplomatic recognition. He also demanded $25 billion cash for damages he claims East Germany suffered through the West German economic boom. Brandt countered with proposals to reunite children and parents separated by the communist barbed wire border and to enable separated lovers to marry. In return, he's ready to see East and West Germany become members of the United Nations and to exchange diplomatic representations, but not embassies. Meanwhile, out in the square, there's a little communist magic going on. The antisocial elements who dared to cheer for Brandt are forced to retreat several blocks behind tight cordons of police reinforcements, and a new crowd is brought in, hastily rounded up by the party from nearby shops and factories. Their pro-communist slogans echo the demands the East German Prime Minister has just made at the conference table. On the way to make a symbolic visit to the site of the Nazi death camp at Buchenwald, the Chancellor gets a view of the real East Germans, the real mixture of believers and non-believers. Brandt asked to lay a wreath at the Buchenwald Memorial. A socialist himself, he had to flee Nazi Germany. He and the East German socialists do share common roots. And since Prime Minister Stoph has agreed to a second summit in West Germany, they share at least a limited common future. That's a modest beginning.
Brandt told Stoph today that there's no getting away from Germany's past. But what happens now, after the summit, cannot be pushed off on history or on Adolf Hitler. It's up to the East and West German governments themselves. John Sheehan, CBS News, Buchenwald, East Germany.
The two agreed to a second summit in the West German city of Kassel on May 21st. The United States today became the first nation to recognize the right-wing government in Cambodia, only 24 hours after it deposed the absent Prince Sihanouk. The State Department's position is that Sihanouk was removed through constitutional processes. Meanwhile, Sihanouk was in Peking, and the Red Chinese were treating him as if he were still a chief of state. From the warmth of the welcome, it appeared the Chinese might be willing to serve as host country if Sihanouk decides to set up a government in exile. He already has hinted at such a possibility. At the Paris peace talks, the communists accused the United States of having a hand in the political crisis that led to Prince Sihanouk's overthrow. They charge that the Nixon administration is trying to turn Laos and Cambodia into Vietnam's number 2 and 3. U.S. representatives ignored those charges. Defense Secretary Laird, commenting on developments in Laos, said today that the communists would appear to have the capability of sweeping across the country. But he added that there is yet no indication that they will.
You didn't eat much. Is something the matter?
It's just a cold. I'm getting that achy feeling.
You have a fever. You just take it easy.
To relieve the pains and fever of a cold or flu, aspirin is what doctors recommend. And Bayer is 100% aspirin.
Fever's gone?
I feel fine.
To know that that someone's feeling better.
Bayer works wonders.
Hi, I'm Marlene Francis, and I'd like to test your judgment. Which of these antacid tablets would you say is stronger? I mean, which do you think settles more of the acid that causes heartburn or indigestion? Well, once again, the biggest is not the best. The smaller Phillips tablet is concentrated, so it's stronger than either of the leading antacid tablets that come in a roll. There is no contest. Phillips tablets are stronger. You'll like them.
The Saigon Command, in its latest weekly Vietnam casualty report, lists 101 American battle deaths, only the second time this year that the toll has exceeded 100. 620 Americans were wounded. South Vietnam reported their loss of 459 men, and enemy deaths were put at 2,382. The commander of the U.S. Marical Division in Vietnam, Major General Lloyd Ramsey, is recovering from a broken arm suffered in a helicopter crash. The aircraft went down in what is considered enemy territory west of Chulai. 2 persons aboard were killed, 5 others wounded. After an all-night ground and air search, Ramsey and the other survivors were found and rescued. All are reported in good condition. Cause of the crash has not been determined. The U.S. Information Agency has been conducting some opinion polls about the war among the South Vietnamese, but the findings have not been made public. Today, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee asked an agency official, Edward Nickel, who works out of Saigon, to supply details of the polls. He refused, saying USIA Director Frank Shakespeare told him that the poll results were under review because of, quote, possible security elements involved. Chairman William Fulbright called that response entirely unsatisfactory. Congressman Al Mendel Rivers lashed into the top echelon of the Army today for bringing charges against those 14 officers in the My Lai massacre. He said the officers, including Major General Samuel Coster, were, in his words, indicted for something they didn't know about. And he said he believes most Americans do not agree with the way they are being treated. The 14 are accused of failing to investigate and report the massacre. Rivers said his House Armed Services Committee will investigate the affair. It just can't go on, said a bank official about the postal strike, which went through its second day in the New York metropolitan area today. A union official said, we'll stay out until hell freezes over. And a government spokesman said, only friendly persuasion can end the strike because you can't jail thousands of men. David Culhane has the story.
Several stockbrokers like Bache & Company have decided to truck their mail outside the city to points where it can be posted. The securities industry as a whole was hard hit. Billions of dollars change hands daily through the mails, and discussions have begun about temporarily closing the stock exchanges if the strike goes on over the weekend. Other businesses are only just beginning to realize what this first postal strike could mean if it continues. Consolidated Edison, for instance, usually processes and mails 50,000 bills a day. And businesses depending on parcel post mail orders could quickly find themselves with nothing to do. Other companies desperately need daily collections for operating cash. In Chicago, at the world's largest post office, and elsewhere around the country, mail headed for New York was embargoed. Pile-ups are developing, and the strike itself could spread. Locals of the striking union at Pittsburgh, Boston, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Houston are considering sympathy walkouts. The effects of the strike are only beginning to be felt. If it continues and spreads, no one really knows what its full impact would be. David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
President Nixon asked Congress today for changes in federal housing and college student aid programs. His housing bill, aimed at consolidating and simplifying present programs, also proposes making FHA home loans available without down payment. On education, Mr. Nixon said that now is the time to achieve the goal of no qualified student being barred from college for lack of money. The president would put the emphasis of college aid on loans more than grants and channel most of it to students whose parents earn less than $10,000 a year. The student loans would be repaid within 20 years after graduation, double the time now allowed. The National Council on Education opposes the bill on the grounds that it would leave students of middle-income families at the mercy of high interest rates. The man President Nixon has nominated as draft director, Curtis Tarr, said today that most student and job deferments should be abolished. Testifying at a Senate hearing, Tarr also opposed ending the draft until it has been demonstrated that there are enough volunteers to meet military manpower needs. Tarr won quick and unanimous committee approval of his nomination, and it now goes to the floor for confirmation. 3 years ago this month, a young Atlanta man, Thomas Glenn Jolly, fled to Canada to avoid the draft, as hundreds more have done. 2 months later, he went before a U.S. consul there and renounced his citizenship. Subsequently, Jolly returned to the United States. But today, the Board of Immigration Appeals, in its first decision involving such a case, ruled 4-1 that Jolly is no longer a citizen and must leave the country within 10 days. The key issue is not evasion of the draft, but voluntary renunciation of allegiance. The anti-war movement's week of demonstrations against the draft generally has been ineffective. For example, in New York City today, where draft boards are closed to avoid confrontations, only about 300 persons turned out for a demonstration. More than half were taken into custody in prearranged arrests as they crossed police barriers. At draft headquarters in Washington, only 350 demonstrators showed up. They found the front door locked. Similar small turnouts were reported from various other locations across the country, and the initial accounts did not list any significant violence.
Springtime out here means more than mending fences. It's a time of chill early mornings and the smell of pine trees. A time when cattle are again in the high pastures. It all happens in Marlboro country. Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country.
This smoke not only adds to air pollution, it also cuts down on mileage. But with mobile detergent gasoline, you can help prevent a new car from becoming a smoker and an old car from smoking worse. Mobile helps keep your engine clean, so your good money doesn't go up in smoke. And the air we all breathe
is a little nicer to breathe.
Mobile detergent gasoline. A cleaner engine means cleaner air.
A new oil slick threatens prime oyster beds off the coast of Louisiana after a construction barge clipped the top off an oil well in the Gulf of Mexico. A spokesman for Gulf Oil Company says the well is old and deficient, leaking only about 2 barrels a day. But the Black Bay area where the mishap occurred is already threatened by that Chevron oil platform 35 miles away, which has been spilling up to 1,000 barrels a day since March 10th. Britain, which taught us a few things about rare roast beef and fine leather, also offers lessons on what to do about pollution. For the latest in our reports on man and his environment, here's Morley Safer in London.
London is Britain's biggest port and biggest industrial city. It is also one of the cleanest cities in Europe, certainly cleaner than any industrial city in the United States. Concern about the environment in the capital goes back many years. A few cranks and eccentrics talked about it, but little was done. In the winter of 1952, it suddenly became everyone's business. For 4 days, Londoners groped their way through a pea-soup fog. Nature had imprisoned the smoke and ash from 1 million chimneys. It seemed no better or no worse than the smogs that had plagued the city for generations. But when the air cleared in March 1952, 4,000 people had died of respiratory diseases. 4 years of parliamentary investigation finally produced the Clean Air Act. The law prohibited all dark smoke. Factories were forced to install a series of filters and a system in which the smoke was washed before it went up the chimney. The individual boroughs of London passed local laws, creating totally smokeless zones. In order to achieve that in a nation that still relies on open fires for heating, a crash program in the 50s produced a form of smokeless fuel. And since 1956, smoke emission in London has fallen by 60%. Even more impressive is London's waterway. In 1950, the River Thames was a stinking, offensive creek, polluted by millions of gallons of sewage and industrial waste each day. It took 12 years of study to come up with an effective law, but now, 20 years later, the river is still servicing industry, it is still taking the city's waste, but more and more it is becoming a playground for Londoners. Nigel Baker is the Port of London Authority's pollution control officer.
The 12-year study which we carried out on the river has given us the data upon which we can now give both sewage works and industry loads which they can discharge to the river, which are acceptable to the river, so that we can calculate which level we require the river to be at, which means if the public want a clean river, we can give it to them. And we are part of the way to achieving a relatively clean river.
Oh, Galleons, it's Pollution 5. Would you pass the following message, please, to the Pollution Control Officer? Message is that Cunis tip at Rainham, their new tip liquor treatment works. The filter beds are now complete. Humus tank is nearly completed, and that trials are expected towards the end of the month. Over.
Pollution 5, this is Galleons. Roger, will do. Out.
Radio patrol teams spot check factories and public utilities, and they have powers of prosecution. And this year, for the first time in a decade, fish are returning to the Thames. Power stations along the riverbank have had to build return channels for the fish that get drawn into their intake pipes. The fish look dead, they're merely stunned from the beating they take on the return journey. Patrol launches from the Port Authority keep a regular watch on the river. They have a special flying squad to deal with oil leaks from ships and barges. And even here in the working part of the Thames, people feel committed to keep the river clean.
Lovely, John.
There are all kinds of reasons for the success of anti-pollution measures in this country. For one thing, they've been concerned about it for a good many years. Another important reason, and many Americans perhaps don't like to be reminded of it, but people in this country are just plain more law-abiding than we are. And another factor about the environment here is that there just isn't very much of it, so that the chairman of the board is just as likely to be poisoned by his own pollution as the man who sweeps up the factory floor. Morley Say for CBS News, London.
Defense Secretary Laird said today that Russia is installing an improved defensive missile around Moscow. He said its range of many hundred miles can protect much of the population and industry of eastern Russia. Other sources said that in addition to the improved missile, the Moscow ABM system includes better radar and guidance. A dangerous new phase in the Middle East crisis may be in the making. Washington officials have confirmed reports that Russia is bolstering Egypt's air defenses with modern but complicated SAM-3 anti-aircraft missiles. The assumption is that they will have to be installed and manned by the Russians, which could result in Russian casualties. And that could lead to a major East-West confrontation in the Middle East. Despite the missile buildup, President Nixon is still expected to reject for the time being that Israeli request for 50 more jets. And in Israel tonight, officials warned the nation to prepare for a difficult period in relations with Washington. In Chicago, Adlai Stevenson III, Democratic nominee for the Senate, said today that he has learned that the United States is planning to send 8 to 10 jet planes to Libya, the remainder of a squadron for which the former king had contracted before his ouster. The State Department denied it. The Senate today passed and sent to the President the bill banning cigarette commercials from radio and television. It would take effect next January 2nd, the start delayed one day to permit cigarette ads for the football bowl games. The measure also strengthens the health warning required on cigarette packages and frees the Federal Trade Commission to require health warnings in printed advertising. The averages were off on the New York Stock Exchange today. Volume was 8,900,000 shares. The average price per share on the New York Exchange lost 9 cents. On the American Exchange, 10 cents.
In the marketplace, you can see why we speak of the good earth in Colombia, South America. For Juan Valdez, there is no better place to grow coffee. Here in the Andes, the soil was enriched by the volcano millions of years ago. And to this day, the land is so fertile, it makes one's trees grow strong and full. coffee beans grow delicious with flavor in the rich mountain earth, until, one by one, the ripe red beans are picked by hand. To grow coffee this good, you need the Colombian soil. But to make it, all you need is 100% Colombian coffee.
Federal Aviation Administrator John Schaefer announced today that he'll ask the nation's airlines to install a bulletproof shield around the cockpit to foil gun-carrying passengers. Schaefer met with members of the Airline Pilots Association in the wake of Monday's gun battle on a Boston-bound shuttle. On March 6th, an elegant townhouse in New York's Greenwich Village was destroyed by a series of dynamite explosions. Police said it had been used as a bomb factory by young radical left-wingers. 3 bodies were found in the rubble. One of them was identified only this week by the print of a little finger belonging to a girl member of the violence-oriented Weatherman group. She started life as the girl who had everything. Ike Pappas visited her hometown.
Diana Outen came from a background of family wealth and power. The Outens have been community leaders in Dwight, Illinois for 100 years. The family runs the local bank. And it founded the Keeley Institute, said to be the first of its kind in this country for the treatment of drug and alcohol addicts. The football stadium is named for the Outens. As a freshman in high school, Diana was a straight A student, but she left to go east to school, where she became increasingly aware and concerned about the world in which she lived. Driven by this, she began to work with underprivileged children, teaching them to read. When he heard the news of his daughter's death in the Greenwich Village townhouse explosion, James Outen, a local banker and former Republican member of the Illinois House, cut short a vacation in London with another daughter, Carol, and hurried home. There was a short, quiet time with his family, and then the father returned to speak with reporters.
Mr. Outen, had you known that she was politically involved this way?
Oh, yes. We've discussed this often.
You talked with her often about
Yes,
it?
about this, and I've talked about this movement, and I've given my ideas, and she's given me her ideas. There's been a real interchange of ideas. And, of course, I've disagreed with her, and she's disagreed with me, but I haven't convinced her, and, of course, it's very obvious.
What was her reaction, sir?
To what?
To the movement, to her involvement. What did you say to her? What did she say?
Well, this thing has gone on. I mean, this isn't anything that that you could discuss in a minute or two. She had a feeling that there was that the world needed changing, and so do I.
Mr. Outen, she had everything to live for, and she was bright, and she came from a good family. She had so much. What have you tried to think about what might have happened, what might have gone wrong?
No, I think she was completely carried away. I think it was almost an intellectual hysteria. It's very difficult for me to see what these young people are doing. I mean, I know what they say they're doing, but it's difficult for me to see this way of accomplishing these ends.
When you said that she wanted to change the world, what kind of a world did she want?
Well, this is something that was very difficult for her or her friends to articulate. This is an obvious question. When we tear this world apart, what kind of a world will we replace it with? And this is something they don't seem to be able to answer.
What emerges is a story that is becoming more and more familiar to parents. The story of a bright, wealthy, socially concerned young lady who started out trying to help people, but who became a violent revolutionary. In a sense, a daughter of society who wholly rejected that society. And in Miss Outen's case, that rejection led to her violent death. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Dwight, Illinois.
Boy, business is bad. Where are all of my customers? Got a surplus of elephant's milk? The moths are getting to my rhino hides. I've tried everything. Ads, specials, deals. So where's all the business? Oh, no. Not again. The grope. The grope got to my customers.
The grope preys on people who don't know where to find what they're hunting for, turning a search into a jungle hunt. Smart businessmen advertise in the yellow pages, where smart people do their hunting. Because the yellow pages tells you where it's at. And if you know where it's at, the grope can't get you. To avoid the grope and hunt up everything you need for business, including customers, just let your fingers do the walking through the yellow pages.
Charles Manson, chief defendant in the murder case of actress Sharon Tate and others, appeared in the Los Angeles court again today. When a judge ordered a psychiatric examination, Manson requested and was given a new attorney who got the psychiatric examination canceled. Harry Drinkwater reports.
Even on the way to court this morning, Charles Manson was contemptuous of the judicial system.
Your court, I wouldn't accept it.
3 co-defendants who want to be tried with Manson were brought into the same courtroom today, too. On the left, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel in the center, and Leslie Van Houten, all accused of murder. Their dresses by the Manson family, their song by Manson himself, titled, I'll Never Say Never to Always. Outside the courtroom, the Manson family treated the whole proceeding as a lark. Manson today dismissed his court-appointed attorney and again demanded that he represent himself. The judge said no. Manson then blew up and hurled a paperback copy of the U.S. Constitution into a wastebasket. I was going to throw it at you, Judge, but I was afraid I might hit you, he said. Manson then surprised the court by requesting the legal services of one Ronald Hughes, who has helped in the promotion of Manson's record album. The judge agreed. After court, Manson's new attorney was asked about his own legal experience.
Yeah, this will be the first case that I've ever tried.
How long have you been an attorney?
Just since last June.
Are you going to go ahead with the psychiatric examination?
No, we've withdrawn the psychiatric examination. I've seen Mr. Manson in county jail for probably more than any other attorney, 70, 80 times, and it's certainly my feeling that Mr. Manson is sane. There's no question about his sanity in my mind.
As Manson was led back to jail, newsmen put the sanity question to him, too.
This morning, the judge made a fool of himself. Again. Then he questions my sanity.
Are you sane?
I question his, huh?
Are you sane?
Sane?
Yes.
That's relative.
Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Los Angeles.
The Manson trial date was set for April 20th. And that's the way it is. Thursday, March 19th, 1970. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.